Justin is in town. I don't know where he is.
Hi everyone, I'm Bart Smekla, and I will be hosting our this bi-weekly community meeting. At the beginning, I want to remind everybody that about the code of conduct, which we can summarize as be excellent to each other. And is there someone new who wants to introduce himself? Let me see. No, so let's move further. Please add your name to our agenda document. And I think that this week we should start with billing review. Tim, you are muted, I think.
Are we mute? Yes, sorry, give me one moment while I load it up. I didn't get ahead of you.
Yeah, of course.
I was just pinging Justin to see if he was going to join us today.
And feel free, if there is some other topics you want to discuss, feel free to add still them to our document.
Hi, Carl. So I can look at the cloud console. I don't have the billing report PDF in front of me though.
Mm-hmm.
Let's set the date ranges.
I will try to find this document too.
Let's set January 22. How about we do all of January?
Mm-hmm.
122.
So actually the last one which I have on email is from 11 of December.
Okay, you want to tell me the range that you got, the date range?
One moment, please. It is, I'm opening it now. So the range, still loading. So the range is, oh, actually it is 20, oh, it's really, it is like 25 of December and till 21 of January, 21st January. So this is actually something.
Yesterday?
So I opened this document and it looks like it's, even if the mail was old, I have the data from which are new.
Okay. So I see, where's my total? I see a total of $1,025.
So here it is, $1,026.71.
Excellent.
Honest difference.
Excellent. From my report, I see the lion's share goes to DNS queries.
Yep.
500 million queries.
That's it.
Wow.
Here it is at $571.46 and $313 to compute engine, the next item on the list.
Yes. Compute engine in America is a distant second. That doesn't seem right. Over 1.5 billion DNS queries?
Maybe we have a really low TTL or something?
1.5 billion queries in a month?
I mean, if we had a 1 second, I don't know.
Something's broken.
Yes, something's broken or being attacked. Okay, well, to-do item, figure out if I can dig into that further.
Oh, there was a massive spike on one day, January 4th.
Yes.
That was not a release. First day back from everybody.
I see it as January 3rd on the graph. Oh, sorry, I can't really tell if it's the 3rd or the 4th because the hover is right between them. But yes.
I have a guess. I'm looking now. I have a guess.
What's that?
Uh-oh.
1 sec. I'm just checking it.
So until Christoph checked it, so the the default TTL is 300 seconds, which is pretty low for DNS in general. So that could be why anything going viral or something just shows up heavily in our DNS records. A safe thing would be to go with the default one to like 3,600. That's like usually the lowest we would go on anything that is not the main thing, probably.
Somebody want to send a PR? We change all of the 300s. I mean, I don't think that's this, but I agree with the assessment.
So it's only one 300. It's the OctoDNS default TTL. We don't specify anything specifically, I think. I only did a rough overview.
Yeah, for some things, 3,600 will be fine. I would not necessarily want to move Prow, because if something happens there, having a lower TTL on Prow and being able to move it to a new ingress is helpful. We've had to do it before.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that probably doesn't need to switch because it's behind a Anycast IP is the one from Netlify, and it's also CNAME to Netlify, I think. So that would probably be the safest one, and it probably is the one that gets the most hits from overall guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still eager to hear what Christoph thinks this spike might be. But there's actually, I see 3 separate spikes that each range into the $50 sort of range.
Are any of them after the 14th?
Yes, there's the...
Or are they all before the 14th?
16, 17.
Yeah.
Okay. So those ones I have a good guess at. The Kubernetes HackerOne bug bounty launched on January 14th.
Okay.
And we have noticed system-wide across lots of different parts of our infrastructure, people are poking it with sharp sticks to try and see what they can get at in lots of different ways that I can't say on a public call. But people have definitely been jabbing different parts of the infrastructure with sharp sticks. And that would be my guess for like 16th, 17th, like a day or two after the bug bounty launched. It's probably somebody just like, I'm going to run random characters and try and find whatever DNS entries I can find.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a ramp up from the 15th to the 17th, and then a tail off to the, I guess that's the 17th too. It's hard to, there's not data line. Between the 15th and the 17th, there was a sharp uptick, but that's not the biggest one. The biggest one is between the 2nd and the 5th of January.
That one I can't explain.
Yeah.
At least not off the top of my head.
I will see if there's any better logs that I can.
I mean, it could just be one. It could be one person, right? Like
It literally could be one person, yeah.
I think you should file a HackerOne bug report saying that one person can cause our bills to spike and cause us to.
Get your bounty.
So I think that this is the proof that our checking of the budget every 2 weeks is helpful to find things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it also shows that bug bounty programs very much encourage people to poke your infrastructure.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so let's move further to the review of action items from the last week. Linus, can you tell a little bit what's the status of Image Promoter currently?
We just merged the testing code for the auditor yesterday. I'm trying to get the proud job submitted, but I'm also working with Eric Feta to use workload identity instead of service accounts. It's like a minor detail. Apparently that's like the new way to do things in Prow. So I'm acting as a guinea pig, but that should close today. So that means that at this point, the backups and the auditing should be pretty much done. I just need to basically run or start the auditor job or Cloud Run service rather, I guess today, because the code is already there. Just really actually a matter of just creating the official promoter images. because we don't want to just, because when you run Cloud Run, you have to say, use this container, but we don't want to just use some random container. So I'll do a build of that, but that can all happen today. Yeah, and then I guess the remaining main thing is doing the migration of images from Google Containers to the new k8s Artifacts prod GCP project. That's just a massive copy, CP-R of images of all the images that we have, and they should all just live in the same like name space, like top level, not under sub project for legacy, like non-breakage reasons. So I can do that today, and after that, I think from the Google side, we have to take care of an internal security issue. That's we are being told by Google Security to make sure that. So just for more context, there's an internal promoter that we have, and we need to essentially turn that off and make sure that GKE uses private images. That's tied into this this process that we're trying to do for shifting the vanity domain of k8s-gcr.io from Google Containers to k8s Artifacts prod. It's kind of messy, but we need to do that because my hands are sort of tied at the moment until I fix that. So that is the current status. Hopefully we can get it done within the next, 2 weeks. I don't know how long it'll take, but.
So, except this issue which you have inside, is there anything which we can help you with, or are you blocked by something we can help with?
So it's an internal thing. So unless you're a Googler.
Well, to be fair, I think this, as we get ready to throw the switch on this, we should maybe reach out again to sort of all of the major parties, the distributions, the clouds, and let them know that, if you care about this, this is imminent.
Right. So yeah, essentially we need to send a communication email to everybody who essentially relies on Google Containers today. Anybody who puts new images there, for example, Core DNS, they put stuff there every once in a while, so they should know about this. All of those parties need to have a sub project with a release process set up, like how we do today for the the handful that we have. So
how hard would it be to create a list of all parties who should be informed? Can we do it, or?
So I can create a list to start with, because I do have the history of all the new images that got into Google Containers for the past, year. So every one of those people, they need to have a sub project and everything set up. So I can create that list.
Okay.
I mean, that list will emerge.
It'll
very quickly. People will start sending us email and will say, right, you need to have a sub project.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to have a less for that and more for the people who are consuming images in bulk.
Oh,
right. Is
sure.
if you care, if you are concerned about who has access to images, or if you want to do better auditing on your own corporate side for whatever distribution, for whatever use cases you have, now is the time to either get on board with the idea that this is going broader, or insulate yourself however you want to, right?
So, and do you think that there is some Google group or Slack channel where we should also put the information about it?
Yeah, so I don't think there is. I'm thinking about this. I don't think there is an implementers forum or anything like that. Maybe the ProdSec would be the closest to that, but I think it'd be an abuse of ProdSec. But it's probably the closest we have.
just to be explicitly clear, number one, existing images on k8s.gcr or existing images in gcr.io/Google containers, those are not being touched. Like the old image references will still exist. Yes?
Correct.
Right.
So it's only new images going forward that are going to need to follow the new process.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
The old images will all be
So-
automatically imported.
So that being the case, I'd say like we should fire something out to KDev, maybe like possibly to KAnnounce, like even users just being like, hey, if you are unable to pull an image after this date that you used to be able to pull before this date, let us know. We'll probably hear about it anyways. But as far as like, yeah, like I think it'd be just providing folks notice, because ultimately anybody who wants to publish new images, we're going to hear about that, because they'll come and they'll go through, oh, it used to go through the Google Containers process. Now you're just getting redirected to the infra working group and going through this process to publish your new images.
Great point. So how about this then as a plan? Let's talk to somebody on ProdSec to see if they think it's worth sending a notice. Anybody here on ProdSec? Are you, Christoph?
No.
We can talk to Tim Allclair or someone on ProdSec, see if they feel like it's worth sending a sort of 2 or 3 week notice to ProdSec. We'll pick a date. We'll pick a target date, maybe, mid-Feb or something. We'll send a notification at T-2 weeks to KDev that this is happening. We'll send a notification at T-1 week to KAnnounce. And then on T-off day, we'll send another reminder to KAnnounce, and we'll send it to Slack all. Kidding. And then we'll have everybody who has a Twitter account retweet it, so that the news that this is happening today gets spread far and wide, so that people know where to reach out, and then we'll go from there.
For me, it sounds like a good plan. Okay.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that we need to go to Twitter. The only thing, the thing that I would worry about is there's a balance there of, we want people to know that, like, if something breaks, come let us know. But also we don't want to instill panic in the community, because really this isn't that big a change, because the images aren't moving anywhere. Like, they technically aren't moving anywhere.
That's the theory, right? But like, if any little minor thing goes wrong, like, this is going to be largely scripted, and we're going to run tests against it to verify that the conversion happened properly. But this is where the devil lives. And if we missed one and people start experiencing problems and they don't know where to reach out, they'll be super frustrated. So I'd rather them say, oh, I saw this thing on Twitter where Christoph was saying that this move thing was happening, something GCR. Let me poke him.
Don't poke me. Go. Yeah, and as far as user issues, like, just so that we can wrangle them, we should probably we should centralize communications on Discuss. As far as user issues go, we can create, like, the email that we send out to KAnnounce. We can create a thread on Discuss and point users there and watch that, so that we have a central place where we know anybody can go, anybody can post. That's not like an email flood if something does go wrong.
Yeah, yes, it cannot be one-off communications. It needs to be centrally stored, and it needs to not be Christoph. That was just all I was going to say.
Okay. So we'll start thinking about the timeline. Yeah?
Yeah.
Right. Rock and roll.
So let's move to the other topic, the AA cluster. Actually, I don't have a lot of information there. I was just reviewing a lot of PRs in this thing. And do you have some more info about? Or something like that?
I have totally ignored it through the holidays, and I just came back to it yesterday and realized that there's actually a bunch of PRs open that I need to shift attention back to. So I apologize to the folks who sent PRs. I will make that my focus for all my infra work over the next week.
Okay, sounds good. So the last topic is the audit tool. Any update here, Tim?
No updates. I haven't touched it. Someone pinged me over the holidays to say they were interested in looking at it. I pointed them at it and basically said, go to town, look at the data. There's some in there that's really interesting. There's some that's totally useless. Hack away. It's a big gnarly, that's actually not even that big. It's kind of a gnarly script that pokes at every various API that it can find to try to get information and sort them in various ways. That's it. Anybody who feels like hacking on information, go look at the audit output. And, if you can find the signal, then it looks good. And if you can't find the signal, then try to eliminate noise.
I've been looking into it. So I had a few questions about that.
Sure.
So the object of the audit tool is to generate like text files that we can diff to the previous versions and see if anything's changed,
yes.
Right? And so I've been, I sent I wanted to see if anyone had any ideas on what sort of APIs we should query to find out the differences.
So the biggest ones that I was concerned with were the permissions related ones. That was the original goal. So you can see if you look at the script now, there's sort of a focus on all the IAM stuff. I think those are the most important. And then it's a matter of, if you poke at what the various, it's all wrapped around G-Cloud. So if you poke at the various G-Cloud commands and see what they dump out, if it's interesting that it might be auditable, then I think it's fair game. Like before I touched it, it was dumping the contents of all the storage buckets. Not a useful thing to audit because those are going to change all the time, right? Ideally, a month-to-month run of this would be relatively small delta, and we'd be able to look at it as a human and say, yes, this makes sense. So like concretely, the IAM dumps dump out some JSON structures, which in my opinion are actually kind of hard to parse as a human. One thing that might be good here would be to actually dump it out in a more tabular format. G-Cloud has some formatting options, or we can run stuff through JQ or whatever to produce more auditable output.
Yeah, and I was also looking into automating the runs. Maybe when IAM permissions change, but I don't know if that would be an option doing that.
Yes, I think the end state of this, once we get to a place where the report is relatively sparse, the delta report is relatively sparse, is we should run it every hour or day or something and get a report sent out as an automatic PR or something that says, hey, the audit results have changed. A human better go look at this, right? What it really means is somebody was granted permissions to something and the textual representation doesn't match the in-cloud representation.
And I can run it on after the permissions change, but I don't know if we can get access to that because I would need to create a sync on the Stackdriver logs. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, we can iterate on that. I'm not sure it's interesting. I'm not sure it's the most urgent thing. If it ran once an hour or once a day or something, that's probably fine. Okay. And we could run that as a job in AAA once we have a comprehension of what the log should actually look like.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so I think that was a very smooth transition to the open discussion because this was I think the first topic. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's switch to another one from Jason about guidance for building automated release tooling for SIG subproject. Jason, can you?
Yes. So just to give some background, we've been working on trying to automate our processes for Cluster API to make doing things like releases a lot easier. So right now we are building staging images whenever we cut a new tag. We would like to take that to the next level now and basically get to the point where we can draft a GitHub release with the proper attached binaries. We already have the process, like we can already kind of automate those within Prow. We can automate building the release notes. the one thing that we can't do today is basically create a draft GitHub release, since that would require, basically GitHub credentials for us to be able to interact with the GitHub API to create that draft release. So what I was looking to this group for was some guidance on, what's the proper avenue for us to get to automate that. Because ideally we'd like to avoid having to use something like GitHub Actions to do this one step of the release process where everything else is automated through Prow.
Is there an API for cutting a GitHub release, or is it UI only?
No, there's an API for it.
So one way or the other, one of these systems needs to carry a key to access the other. There isn't a dynamic integration here that I know.
Yeah, basically we would like to be able to have, a GitHub, token that could be present to the Prow job, or a cloud build, or some way so that we can trigger the action against GitHub to create that release.
So far, the pattern for a secure-ish Prow job is to allow arbitrary actions to happen off in GCB, where we no longer care and everything is disposable and one-off. You can have a Prow job configured to create the GCB from the trusted cluster so that the chain of credentials is secure. And then you can put whatever credentials and steps you want in there. You'll get a decent sized VM underneath, and you can run containers, and you can actually do a sequence of steps and things. It's a little awkward needing to use both. I'm not personally thrilled by it either, but that's the pattern so far. It's mostly being used for pushing images on post submit, but I don't see any reason you couldn't use that to cut a release. You just need some tool you can invoke that will do a release, and you would need a project from this group and to get the credentials fed into GCB through that project.
Yeah. So that's definitely a route that we can look at. The challenges there would be, one, getting a GitHub token that isn't associated with an individual contributor's account. And the other one would be obviously getting those credentials injected properly into the trusted cluster so that we can.
We don't have a pattern for that yet. We only have a handful of accounts. I was playing around with this with kind and then had to drop it. So far the answer there was to just create a bot account amongst the maintainers, but I'm not sure that that's a pattern we want to replicate or how we want to handle this officially as a project, and we're not actually using that account yet.
So I can speak from the GitHub side with my GitHub admin hat on. Where we've needed like specific GitHub credentials to do something, like the closest comparison I can make is is either the Kubernetes release tooling, so like Anago and stuff, or the publishing bot, the staging publishing bot, is a unique account and a unique set of credentials for a specific bot and a specific process. We don't want to do things like reuse Prow's credentials in more than one place because Prow is over-credentialed. For those kind of actions, we would want to scope the particular account and the particular credentials to say like, okay, you have just as much permissions as you need and no more. And what we don't really have is kind of a standardized process around like how we do that. Because right now, the few places where we've needed to create a bot account, we've kind of just done it ad hoc, and it's like a group of people who we trust holds, who we know are like the humans behind the bot actor. But we like that's something that on the GitHub admin side we should probably do. So I don't know if you have a ticket open for this already in the k8s.io repo for any infra work, but like definitely let's get an issue opened under the k8s/org repo, which is where all the GitHub admin stuff happens, and describe out like basically you're looking for a service account. You're looking for a GitHub service account to do this particular action. You want it to be able to cut releases on a particular repo. And then we can kind of look at that and see like what the best way to handle that as far as like a process we can replicate if there's other folks that need to do a similar thing.
I guess it's going to, not that needs to derail this, but I think that's actually going to be interesting and problematic, because I don't think GitHub's going to just be super helpful about stamping out like 150 accounts.
Yes.
We used to have service accounts for every email list. So that's a certain, we've done that before. That was a tire fire, but GitHub didn't have a problem with it. We used to have
but I
like
think
over
that
150 service accounts.
Yeah, but those were backed by unique email addresses, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be a pain.
Yes. But like anything with a plus sign in it is a unique email address from GitHub.
No, I can tell you from experience that can get your account flagged, and then it's useless.
Yes, I think, I mean, at some point in time, multiple bot accounts was against GitHub's TOS, but they sort of looked the other way for us. I don't know if they changed the TOS.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that if you take like, say, Ben the Elder plus nonsense and register a new account with it, there's a high probability that it is just auto-flagged, and getting it unflagged is not. I actually had to ask a friend for help. I don't think that's going to be a usable pattern. I think so. Like, what I'm really getting at is, sure, we can probably make a bunch of like Kubernetes.io mailing lists. Like FetaBot is backed by a Google group, but we're going to need to manage a lot of credentials here down the road, and I think we probably need a solution to that.
Right, but I guess my point is that the particular thing of like solving GitHub bot service accounts that's not this group that needs to solve that. That piece of the puzzle isn't this group that needs to solve that. That's something that I need to talk with like the GitHub admin folks, and I can reach out to the folks at GitHub about as far as like what the pattern is for solving service accounts.
But I suspect it's going to involve a bunch of email accounts and then credentials for the email and the bot. So that those things may be this group.
We need a password manager. Then that's where it'll loop back to this group as far as like, hey, we need to manage like password manager, two-factor credentials, and that kind of stuff. But that's not necessarily the starting point. The starting point is like talking with the GitHub admin team, talking with GitHub itself, and figuring that problem out.
So can I back up for a second? So Jason, is this an automated release, or is this a human who's pushing a button saying today is release day?
So our goal is that the main human interaction should be to push the tag. Once the tag is pushed, then, you know, obviously we already have the staging images that are being built. We'd have the release notes generated, the artifacts generated, and the draft GitHub release published, so that, you know, basically pushing up, you know, initiates everything, and then it's just a matter of the image promotion, modifying the release notes, and publishing the release notes for, you know, actually making the release public.
Can the human pushing a tag like run a container that does this? I mean, being able to push a tag is a pretty powerful permission. You need like write access to the Git contents of the repo.
Yeah, but that's already something that we, is a requirement for the releases that we have anyway.
Well, it is possible for a bot to create a tag as well, but if your plan is to have a human push a tag, then it might be reasonable for the human to like invoke a release tool.
Isn't pushing a tag equivalent to push to master, which we sort of frown upon?
Yeah, but I mean, for a long time, that was the only possible way. I think it's actually possible to, through the API, create one.
I know it's possible through the UI, right? So
it would. That often gets ahead of the API.
Sure. I mean, if like thinking out loud, and we should probably time box this, but thinking out loud, if the build process produced everything a human would need, but the human had to go to the UI and say, create the tag, now create the draft release, like, would that be a appreciable step forward, or is that just not a good stopping point?
So right now we're at the point where, we basically have to push a tag that triggers the automated image builds to staging. At that point, we manually run a release notes generation tool, generate the artifacts, and then we basically copy and paste those into a draft GitHub release right now. How we automate that process further, I'm not sure how we do that without building a specific external tool that you push a button and it creates the release or the branch and all of that. I'm not sure how we get to that stage.
The other option here, like, and maybe Jason, like, we can sync up after the meeting, because like the other option that I've used before with decent success is actually GitHub Actions to do the things that you were literally stating as far as release notes generation and drafting the release. And then it would just be connecting together all the artifact stuff that's happening in Prow with the actual GitHub stuff for like publishing the actual release through the GitHub Releases API. It might not actually be that bad to, like, if you're already having the manual step of like run release note generation tool and then copy and paste in, it might not be that bad to have at least the release note generation and creating the release based off of the tag that you pushed, that be done in Actions, and then all the artifact generation being happening over on the Prow side, and just link the two together.
Yeah, that's definitely our alternative if we can't automate this through Prow somehow. However, that requires basically managing, if we want additional community contributors to be able to participate in this process, we're managing permissions in two different places for different parts of the release process. The permissions for Prow versus the permissions, for GitHub Actions and all of that. Not to mention two different systems to learn and all of that. The ideal thing would be just point people to one place for the automation versus two, but
you're also going to have GitHub or the GCB part, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're doing it over in Prow isn't necessarily easier, even if it's like centralizing it, because you're not technically running it on Prow. You're using Prow to generate a GCB job. Which might be even more complicated and more to learn otherwise. Because the thing is, permissions to see GitHub Actions are the same permissions that you need to push a tag. So if somebody has permissions to push a tag, they'll have a permission set for GitHub Actions too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
I think we should probably time box this discussion and have it out, because I think there's like a few different pieces here to that as far as what the best way to move forward is, but there's definitely options.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Okay, so I think that we can close this topic for now. There's only last one, which I created, is about the subgroups, because I want to get back to this idea and to move things forward. And the thing is that after my long PTO, I think that we don't have anymore the subgroup for image promoter because it's almost at the end. What do you think? What we should do to get these people who had like an initiative to help back to us and get this help from them?
We need to give them things to do.
That's the case. What part? Because we divided this into the first, second, and third stage of the subgroups, and we are on the stage of moving the small projects to the new cluster. Where we need help, and where we can actually drive these people to help.
So the biggest thing here, like, this is an opinion from me, but like the problem is I don't have the cycles to actually drive this to completion right now. The thing that we could really use help for, and that I see biting us in the end, is we have too much bash in the k8s.io repo. All of these ensure scripts and stuff that are great, but it's going to bite us at some point, and the way that we're growing, it doesn't feel maintainable. My personal kind of like gut feeling is moving some of this stuff over to Terraform, that we have a Terraform config that says like, okay, here's what things look like. We have these projects, they have these resources in them, and like templating some of that stuff out so that it's like, okay, we need a new project for a staging bucket. Here's what that, module or something looks like in Terraform. So it's easier to stamp out new ones, and that we have consistent entry points for syncing and auditing and making sure what's in GCP actually matches what our config is in k8s.io. My gut says that's probably the way to go. I just don't have the cycles to drive that through to completion. But I think that's the piece of tech debt that is both holding us back and is going to bite us later.
So I think somebody sent a PR or something around this, and I over the holidays, I just haven't gotten a chance to look at it. Part of it because I'm afraid of it, because I don't know Terraform that well. So I don't know what best practices are in this case. But as much as I want to chide you for being racist against Bash, I agree, actually. And I have spent time myself looking at how to refactor this Bash, and it ends up looking a lot more like Terraform, where there's some basic level of inheritance and some template, and you fill in the blanks for a particular project. And as I started writing that, I went, I really ought not do this. So I'm with you. It needs an owner who knows Terraform, who knows where the pitfalls are, who can say, don't do this because that way lies madness, but do it this way.
And if it would be really helpful if that person could either write down some links to point to what they consider the best practices to be, so that we can consistently follow them without having that person review everything. Given something like that, I think I'm a lot more comfortable to review arbitrary people coming along and tweaking the Terraform than the Bash. The other downside of Bash is that it's really expensive to review and catch all bugs in. And with the Terraform, we'll have the ability to compare against the actual state, the desired state, which will be pretty handy, I think.
I think that's actually a huge value of Terraform over Bash is that it's got the compare mode, but I think you have to write it carefully to make sure that that works well, right? Whereas the Bash right now takes forever to run because it just blindly asserts everything, and it can take hours to run through, sort of reassert everything.
So we at JetStack have all of our infrastructure and like Google Groups and stuff like that managed via Terraform at the minute, as well as like GitHub membership and so on. So we've also started to run into things of like individual subdivisions within the company are wanting to manage their own infrastructure and roll that forwards, and kind of keep it all in sync. And some of the problems where we've run into issues with Terraform are specifically around like the state management when you've got multiple people working on things, because you kind of have your state repository. When that can be like a GCS bucket or something, and it has locking and whatever else, but you end out with either people applying that manually from their machines, or there's a project called Atlantis, which we've just started kind of evaluating, which is like GitHub automation to do Terraform plans and Terraform applies and so on. There's also the new Terraform Cloud service, which actually looks pretty interesting too, where it will actually deal with generating those. I think it can do audits as well and like show you your plans and your applies as they go along. And that definitely has tiers for open source. So aside from, right, I mean, that's probably a lot further down the line. I think if we were to adopt Terraform, we'd probably start with people running it on their local machines like we do now, and having a trusted few. But I can try and either gather some feedback there from, or like write up some details on what we've been doing to make that better. We've been moving things into like Terraform modules to make it easier to distribute and like have different people working on that repository. So I'll try and write something up or get someone within JetStack to get involved with this, because I think we might have some insight to share. And at least we've been burnt a few times. I don't know if we've been burnt the most times, but not all the time. We're still being burnt, so yeah. But I would also say, like, despite that, it is definitely better than Bash. Having gone through similar pains of like, oh, I just want to do this one thing and write some Bash and then spend 2 hours reconciling state and going mad building auditors.
The like right now, so our current state, we'd have some Terraform. We use Terraform for the clusters. Like AAA is currently spun up via Terraform, and we've solved at least sort of. We have like a bucket that we're using for state. So we've got like the very basics needed for Terraform infrastructure already in place. It's just kind of like moving and importing like what our current stuff is into something. But like right now, a lot of these privileged actions, there is like, we have kind of like small trusted teams who are actually running things. And for me, as one of those people who like has credentials and has permissions to go and like hit buttons on keyboard to go and run things after somebody PRs something in, there are certain scripts right now that I'm like, okay, I know everything that script does. I feel really comfortable running that script. And then there's other scripts that I'm like, I am terrified about what's going on in that script. I don't even want to touch it. I don't even want to run it. I'm going to leave that one for Tim. So like, if we move to something where we had a lot of this stuff done via Terraform, at least for like the Google infrastructure side, the groups stuff, the tool that we've written in Go to handle our Google groups, I actually have a great deal of confidence in because I've like rewritten it 3 times. So the tool that we have right now, I feel good about that tool, and it handles some of our weird custom use cases with G Suite. But the stuff that's Bash, the stuff like creating new projects, creating staging buckets, that kind of stuff, moving those over to Terraform as well, I think would be a win for us if we can get some like best practices in place that we agree to and get some of those infrastructure pieces moved over. That the new process is, okay, go add this like, 10-line blurb to a Terraform config, and that's your new staging bucket project, as opposed to, modify a Bash script and then run through, and this Bash script is going to hammer every single staging bucket project that we have, making sure that it conforms.
So I agree, although I feel more comfortable with the shell scripts than you do, having rewritten them 3 times. The problem that I'm facing is I'm on the cusp of rewriting them a 4th time, and at this point they're delicate enough that if I do that, I will almost certainly get something wrong. And if I'm going to get something wrong, I'd rather get it wrong in the right direction than get it wrong in the wrong direction. And to me, it seems like the right direction is what everybody else is doing, which is not a pile of bash scripts. Yes, so Munners, I'm happy to talk with you about sort of my thoughts on the state of where that shell script stuff is and how I would think a reasonable minimum set of Terraform would model it. I don't know the Terraform syntax on how to spell it. That's where I really need the help.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
Cool.
Let's set that up.
Okay, so that sounds like a plan. Is there any other topic which we want to discuss today? We have like 6 minutes more. Okay, so if not for the first time, the second and the last one, I'm suggesting to end 5 minutes earlier. And thank you everyone for being here. Thank you guys for taking notes. And see you later in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.